Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. My dad's? A killer? Hey, I'm gonna be home just a little bit late tonight. I'm running by the library, I tell Mason through the phone. Mason is my boyfriend of 5 years on Tuesday. Okay. No worries. See you when you get home. Love you. Love you, I say, and hang up. Right now, I'm taking forensic classes, and I'm totally lost. You'd think it'd be easier, but you'd be mistaken. So, I'm on my way to get a forensics for dummy book. My mom says this is the right path for me, and I should stick with it though. She says, my dad would really proud too. He was killed when I was 2. He was shot. I get out of the car and start walking into the library. This library is probably the nicest ones you could come across. It's tall and futuristic looking, completely glass, and has this huge tree in front, like the Circle of Life tree from The Lion King. That's why I call it the Lion King Library. It's special. Mrs. Darcy, the head librarian, greets me. She's a funny little thing, fierce too. What are you looking for, doll? She asks. Forensics for dummies. Could you point me to the crime section, please? Ah, right around the corner, she answers, pointing. Thank you, Mrs. Darcy, I say, and walk towards the section. When I get to the shelves, there are hundreds and hundreds of books. Some talking about mass killers, and other talking about the victims. I run my fingers across the spines and look at all the titles. How to stop a killer. Wonder how promising that is. Another one says, behind the scenes of the FBI. That sounds interesting. I grab it and knock 3 books off the shelf, and it echoes. This is embarrassing. I grab the books I knock over and reach to out them on the shelf, but one catches my eye. Is that my dad's name? Is that him? On this book? I look at the title. I'm stopped in my tracks, and I can feel the color bleeding from my face. Inside the mind of the Carter Brooks, the killer we all know. What? I am holding the books in my hands, and I can't stop shaking. My dad's a killer? My breathing's gone heavy, and I can feel the hit tears running down my cheeks. I didn't know this. What? I'm in shock. My dad? A killer? I look at the back, and I see more pictures of him, and I go into a complete sob. My dad was a killer, and I find out this way? From a book that I knocked off a shelf? In a library in the middle of Utah? Should I look through it? I sit down with my back facing against the shelf. I open up to the first chapter. His drive. I put this down. I can't read this, but I owe it to myself, right? I pause and just stare at the book. This isn't real. It can't be. He died from a shooting. He was the victim. After 30 minutes of sitting here, flipping, and looking through the pages, I'm completely hurt. Why didn't I know any of this? I've learned he killed 20 people and was taken away from his family, us. And apparently, we meant everything to him. I need to call my mom. I get my phone and let her ring. Mom? I say. You can hear the hurt in my voice. I don't know how I'm going to tell her, but she knows. Why didn't she tell me? Honey, what happened? Mom, I'm at the library, and I found his book about Dad. I struggle getting through the sentence. She gasps. What? Why didn't you tell me? How didn't I find out? Maddie, what does the book say? I haven't read a lot of it. Mom? Yeah? I want to come over, and I want you to tell me everything. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Dinner will be ready when you get here. I hang up. My hands still haven't stopped shaking. Should I really be mad about her not telling me? The guilt and hurt I would be feeling from knowing would have ruined me. I can't be mad, but I'm upset. I'm being calm about this. I'm not blowing up, but I should have known. At least some of it. Not all the details. I called Mason and let him know that I'll be home late. I told him my mom wanted me over for her church group. I can't tell him about this right now. I pull into her driveway and sit in my car for a second. I'm bracing myself. I'm in shock right now. I know it will hit me tomorrow and hurt more. I get and walk up to her porch. I knock 3 times. She comes to the door immediately, and she has tear-stained cheeks. We can sit at the table. Did you bring the book? She says, leading me to her table. I nod. I'm saving my breath. I pull the book out of my purse and lay it out in front of her. Her eyes get glossy again. What do you want to know first? She asks. How did I not find out from anyone? Not on the news, family, close friends. And why? Money. Grandma paid everyone for you not to find out. She takes my hand. You have to understand, it was for you protecting. We didn't want you living with fear or hurt constantly. Were you going to tell me? Ever? How did you think I wasn't going to find out? We're going to find out at some point. I always knew that. Hate me for this. But I didn't want to have to tell you. I thought, since it was 40 years ago, you wouldn't see things like this. She says, gestures to the book. Why did he do it? He was angry, so he killed people? He was angry, so he killed people? Did he hurt you? I add. She shakes her head. No, he never laid a hand on anyone he loved. What was wrong with him? What inside him made him wanna kill kill someone. It can't just be anger, Mom. I mean, I'm in my first semester for forensics, but I know that can't be it. Mom, I know you know. She looks down at her plate. We haven't even started eating yet. The food's getting cold. He had multiple personalities. 2. When he was angry, it triggered his even angrier ego. He would go on killing sprees, she says through tears. This isn't easy for her. I imagine this isn't something she wants to revisit. You accepted that? Did you try to get help for him? I had to accept it. He wasn't always like that. After his dad and mom died, that's when it happened. And I did try to get him help. He wouldn't let me do it for him, not even behind his back. Did he tell you when he was doing it? Never. It was always when I would visit it, family or friends, when I was out of town, and I wanted a divorce, even though I loved him more than anyone understood. But I knew that would make things worse in his head, so it never happened. I'm not mad at you, Mom, I say, looking up at her. I think she needs to hear that. You're not? And she tilts her head a little. Because I would be. No, I'm in shock right now. Everything feels numb, and Jay didn't really know him. We weren't close. I choke on my tears. But I thought he was the victim, not the guy behind the trigger. I know. I'm impressed on how calm you're reacting. And I'm sure this will all hit differently tomorrow. But you have to understand, knowing everything will make it harder to cope with. Now that you know, I think we should save the details. I know you came here for answers. When it's time, I can dish them to you, but not in one night. That's not right to you. She says, I know she's right. If I knew everything, who knows what my mindset would be, or what I would do. Let's eat, I say, and I look up at her. I change my mind. I don't want to know all this right now. It's to heaven. We finish dinner, and we clean up the dishes. Can I leave the book here? I don't want to return it, and I don't want to read it, I ask. Yeah, sure. You can leave it on that table, she answers. Thank you for telling me all this and letting me come over in the moment. I know it must be hard to revisit all of this. Of course, you had to know at some point. I'm glad you called me, though, she says, and I grab my keys off the coffee table. Maddie, don't brush this off, though. I know you're hurt and scared. I can tell. Don't move past it as fast as you can, she adds. I won't. I love you, Mom. I have to get back to Mason. I lean over and hug her goodbye, and I hold on for a couple seconds longer. She lets go, and I walk out, carefully shutting her door behind me. I sit in my car for a second. I can't wrap my head around any of this. My dad's a killer. My dad is a killer. They're all foreign words. On my drive home, I couldn't help but just cry the whole time. I took the long way home, so Mason didn't see the tear stains, hoping they would dowry in time. Hey, how was it? Mason asks when I walk in. It was good. My mom said hi, I say, putting my stuff down. You sure? You okay, babe? He says, pulling me into him. I will be, but I don't want to talk about it tonight. Another time, I say, looking up at him. Okay, the bed's made. You can go to bed if you want. I'll stay out here and give you space. Yeah, okay. He kisses the top of my head, and I go into our room. I don't take off my clothes and change. It's too much work right now. I crawl into bed, and my phone rings. I look over, and it's my mom. Hello? Maddie? Yeah, it's me. Okay. I don't know how this tiny iPad works. Is something wrong? No. I just wanted to say good night and wish you sweet dreams. It will be a heavy night. Oh, good night, Mom. I love you. I love you. And I hang up. At the end of today, this book completely changed me. It's a new part of me now. I know things I wish I didn't. The murderous twins. The McKellen twins felt the librarian's stinky breath brush against their nape. So they quickly slid their dirt and blood-stained hands under the table. Shut up, you two, hissed the librarian. Sorry, said Milo McKellen, with the fakest of smiles. The librarian stomped back to his dimly lit desk, where he resumed his scribbling on a notebook. Occasionally, he raised his bald head to survey the hall like a living security camera. Martin McKellen peeked under the table. A few droplets of blood had stained his jeans, and now it would be impossible for him, or rather, his mother, if she hadn't been gone, to wash them away. They would become foolproof evidence, marked forever on his favorite pair of pants. A pale moonlight cast long shadows over the library hall, where the McKellen twins, still soaking wet from the rain, had found shelter. They had sat on one of the long benches, their hands and arms covered in dirt and blood. And now they were arguing. Their disagreement kept on drawing the attention of the librarian, who scowled at the twins and scolded them whenever they spoke a little louder. See that corner over there? Martin asked Milo. Let's go talk there. He won't interrupt us. The twins tiptoed to a corner far from where the librarian sat, hoping to get more privacy. They were surrounded by books, as dusty as if no one had ever touched them except the person who had placed them there centuries prior. So, said Milo. What were we? The body, said Martin. Yes, the body. I think we should have buried it instead of letting it sink into the lake, Martin snorted. As if a hump of soil in the middle of the woods is something you see every day. Better than a dead woman in the trunk of her own car, if you ask me. What other options were there? I couldn't even think straight. Those damn blue lights. Well, it's no use discussing this now, said Milo. We got rid of her. Something hit the floor and echoed throughout the library hall. Martin peeped out. The librarian was kneeling near the bench where the twins were sitting earlier, and he was struggling to get back up. The ink from from his fountain pen had bled in a large puddle onto the marble floor. And now the librarian was fumbling for a tissue to clean that mess with. Milo peeped too, and he said, "He'll be busy for a while." Martin leaned against the book-filled shelves and sighed. "We can't hide in a library forever, Milo." "I know," he said, "but we've got to at least wait for the rain to stop so that we can hop on a train and leave." "Where were you thinking?" Martin asked. Milo shrugged. "I don't know. Canada?" Suddenly, a clap of thunder boomed in the night sky outside, and the library's doors burst open. Martin looked over at the two men who had just entered the building. They were wet, just like the twins were, but they wore blue uniforms, like police officers, said Martin in a quivering whisper. "There's two of them. What do we do?" Milo whispered back. Martin shook his head. "I have no idea," he thought. He was afraid to even think at this point. "They came looking for us," said Milo. "No doubt about that. Otherwise, what would two police officers do in a library after hours?" "Hush, Milo," said Martin. "Please, don't let us be caught." "Good evening," thundered a voice. It was one of the two men. The twins cocked their ears. "I'm Agent Phillips, and this is Agent Clifford. We're looking for a couple of young men, probably in their 20s, red-haired, pretty thin." The librarian did not answer, so the other police officer, Clifford, urged him. "Have you seen someone with this profile by chance?" Martin held his breath. He prayed the librarian didn't reveal where he and his brother were hiding. Second by second, a thick silence was filling up the atmosphere, like a cake rising in the oven. Except this oven was far too hot, and this cake was about to explode. "Avoid us any trouble, Mr. Librarian," said Agent Phillips. "Just tell us if you've seen them or not, and we won't bother you any longer." Martin pushed Milo back into the corner and flattened himself against the bookshelves in case their cover was about to be blown. The librarian cleared his throat and spoke. "No," he said, "I haven't seen them." Martin and Milo gasped as quietly as they could and peeped out from behind the bookshelves once again. The two police officers were looking at one another. Clifford's eyes became two narrow slits, two poison darts he was now aiming at the librarian. "Are you sure?" said the agent. "Sure," said the librarian, trying to sound more sure than he was. "Very well," said Agent Phillips, nudging at Clifford. "Sorry to have disturbed you. We'll leave you now." But Clifford turned and pointed at the bench where the twins were sitting earlier. Under it, there was a mess of paper tissues and ink. And, "Look," said Martin to his brother. "The blood is gone." Milo looked down at the blood on his hands, by now dry, and then over at the bench. "What blood, Martin?" "When I hid my hands under the table, I spilled blood everywhere, on my jeans, on the floor." Clifford's voice boomed once again. "What's that over there, Mr. Librarian?" Agent Phillips grabbed his colleague by his arm. Let's stop it here, Ben. He says he hasn't seen them. Clifford broke free of Philip's grip and fetched the heap of stained paper from the ground. He marched back to the librarian's desk, where the poor man was standing still, but frail, like a clay statue. Clifford unfolded one tissue and slammed it on the librarian's desk. It was stained with large blotches of blood. "What about this, Mr. Librarian?" Clifford scoffed. "Been dabbing the floor all night long, haven't you?" The librarian didn't move a muscle. He just stared at the stained tissue. "These kids have slaughtered their mother," Clifford roared. For a moment, all the books in the library seemed to have teetered, like there had been a severe but rapid earth tremor. "Clifford, calm down now," Agent Phillips commanded. He turned to the librarian. "Tell us the truth, sir. As you can see, this is pretty urgent." The librarian slowly pointed his index finger at the corner where the twins were hiding. Milo gulped, and Martin stopped breathing altogether. The two police officers looked at one another one last time. Agent Clifford pulled out 2 pairs of handcuffs, and Phillips led the way. When they reached the darkened corner, where the twins were supposed to be hiding, though, there were only rows of shelves full of dusty tomes to welcome them. How to rob a library. Harry was ready. Harry hated books. The plan was simple. If he robbed the library, there would be no books to read. No books equals no library. Even if the library wanted to buy new books, they would have no place to put them. Phase 10 of the plan was to burn the library to the ground. The mission was ready to go. Phase 1. Knock out any guards. You will need a fry pan and 2 ropes. The guards wouldn't stand a chance. There were only 2 of them anyway. What harm could they do? The answer to that was a lot of damage. The guards had been trained in the martial arts, so if you stood in their way, you were burnt toast. Good thing Harry wasn't bred, or the mission would be even more difficult. He slowly crept through the bushes, holding his fry pan in one hand and the rope in the other. Soon he saw a light getting close. A guard was coming. Piece of cake, Harry thought. This was going to be fun. Ding! The guard fell down to the floor, so he was tied to a tree. 1 down, 1 to go. Slowly, Harry crept out of the bushes and looked around. Where was the guard? "Hey, you! Stop right there!" called a voice from behind him. Time for real fun. Harry swung the fry pan through the air, and with a thunk, it came to rest on the guard's head. Thud. Time for Phase 2 of the plan. Phase 2. Disable the security cameras. You will need the pickaxe to be sure that no one found him out tomorrow. Harry would have to hide a lot of evidence, like knocking out the guards. All he had to do was smash all the cameras around him. There were about 20 of them scattered around the place. Number 1. Harry threw the pickaxe through the air. Bullseye. Number 2. It spotted him before he saw it, but no evidence remains now. Number 3, 4, 5, 6. Too easy. Number 7. Whoever designed this must have thought that 1-year-olds were the only criminals around. The rest were too easy to be recorded. Time for Phase 3. Phase 3. Shoot a window on the top floor of the library. You will need a gun. Harry took a deep breath. He got one shot at this. That was all. If he missed, he would have to reshoot. Then it would be more likely people had heard the shots and come to invigilate. Ready, aim, fire, bang, smash. The shot couldn't have been better. The window shattered instantly. Time for Phase 4. Phase 4. Climb up the library. Don't do with adult supervision. You will need a rope. Harry took a deep breath. It was time to climb. Using all of his force, he threw the rope up to the smashed window. Then he began to climb up the library. Error in the plan. It has recently rained, and the building is now very slippery. There was no safety gear added to the list. A slip will result in being in a coffin. Harry was about halfway up the 10-meter-high building when the error came into place. He tried to take another step. He slipped and fell. Luckily, he grabbed the rope just in time, so he got away with just a few scratches. So much for a library being a safe place for kids, he thought. Finally, he reached the top. It was time for Phase 5. Phase 5. Take down the librarian. The librarian will never leave. Its post, not even after hours. You will need glue and the remaining rope. Harry looked around, knowing the librarian could be anywhere, watching him. He got to work covering the floor with glue. It was going to be a sticky trap to fall into. Time to do the fun bit. Make noise. One thing you should know about librarians is they hate noise. Shh is one of their favorite words to use. So, noise would be the bait to the trap. Harry counted to 3, and then, boom. He rejected at the top of his voice. A second later, he heard footsteps coming towards him. "I'm over here!" He cried. The librarian turned around and scowled. "Come here, boy." She yielded, taking a step forward. Squelch. She soon found herself glued to the floor. Now it was time to tie her up, just for the fun of it. Time for Phase 6. Phase 6. Rob the books. You will need a sack. Harry did that immediately, so I won't record that. Phase 7. Get ready to set the fire. You will need some of the stolen goods and petrol. Fun was rising in Harry's soul. Time to get ready for the fire. He walked up to the tied librarian and grinned. Then he ripped some of the books to shreds. Then he sprinkled them all around the room. that was just the beginning. Time for the petrol. Harry ran around the room, pouring it everywhere. The librarian looked furious. That made Harry feel a sense of achievement. Phase 8. Make sure the librarian won't get killed in the fire. You won't need anything. Harry walked up to the librarian. "I'm sorry, miss, but I'm going to have to throw you out the window," he said. The librarian looked furiously at him. "Did you not know that a librarian never leaves its post?" She screamed angrily. "Oh well," thought Harry, "so be it." Phase 8 has been cancelled. Phase 9. Make sure you can escape easily. You will need a safe place. Harry looked around the room. He couldn't go through the window because the rope would catch fire. He couldn't just stay here, though. He had to do something. It was then that Harry realized that there was a door to the library, so he could just escape through it. Too bad it can't be a bit dramatic, he thought. Phase 10. Light the fire. You will need the matches. Flick. Harry struck the match. Then he walked over to the petrol. Then he set the fire. He now had just 3 minutes to escape. Fire was already everywhere the eye could see. It was time for the next phase. Phase 11. Escape the library. You will need lots of luck. Without looking back at the screaming librarian, Harry raced downstairs. The fire chased him the whole way. It didn't stop until Harry wasn't out of the library. By now, the building was alight in the darkness, so the firemen and police would be here. Phase 12. Throw the sack of books in the river. You will need the sack of books. Harry raced down to the cold, dark river. It was time to get rid of the books. Without hesitation, he threw the books into the murky depths. He smiled as he watched them go. Phase 13. Act innocent. Sirens wailed as the police came to the scene. Time to do the job. Harry walked right past the police, and they didn't notice. Who would expect a kid to break into a library and murder someone anyway? For more information on how to do damage, please go to your local library, if it hasn't been burnt down, and find more of our how-to guides. A woman of loose morals. Neha covered her head with the dupatta of her salwar kameez and wrapped it across her shoulder. She put on the oversized black sunglasses borrowed from her roommate, Kavya, who, along with the rest of the second-year students of Kasturba Medical College, was attending the first lecture of the day. Dr. Swami was one of the lenient professors, and students often got away with marking proxy attendance for their friends. As Neha checked the pen drive in her pocket for the 10th time, she prayed that Kavya would successfully mark her proxy attendance today. Her life depended on it. Leaving behind her Honda Activa parked in the hostel parking, Neha hailed an auto rickshaw 100 meters from the college gate. there could be CCTV cameras outside shops in the market where she was headed. Arriving in an auto rickshaw, dressed in a plain white salwar kameez with her head covered and most of her face obscured by the oversized sunglasses, would make her indistinguishable from the other women walking on the streets, with the auto rickshaw noisily chugging towards the market. Neha fought off a fresh wave of nausea as she recalled the threatening calls and obscene WhatsApp messages she and her friends had been receiving for the past 6 days, while the boys were being threatened with their limbs being hacked off and their eyes ripped out of the sockets. The girls were being terrorized with warnings of brutal rapes and horrifying acid attacks. The message was loud and clear. Withdraw your testimony or face the consequences. Due to fear of backlash and pressure from their families, 10 out of the 12 students had already withdrawn their testimonies, including the boys and girls who had been hospitalized. After all, the right-wing organization they were up against had strong political affiliations and big muscle. In the past few years, the organization members had been accused of vandalism, ransacking, and violence against minorities. But unfortunately, there had been no convictions. The Mangalore city air was heavy with humidity. But Neha felt a fresh chill sweep through her body as she imagined the repercussions for herself and her family. If the organization found it was she who provided the incriminating evidence, her fear was swiftly replaced by sorrow as she recalled the phone conversation with her family 2 days after the incident. I have already spoken to Mathur. Your testimony has been withdrawn, Neha's father had said on the phone. Mr. Mathur was the police commissioner of Mangalore City and an old friend of Neha's father. But Papa, how could you do that? I've been urging all my friends to testify. How can I back out? You will do as you're told. As it is, you've brought shame upon the family. I have brought shame upon the family. A heavy silence had settled on the phone line. Neha could hear her mother admonishing her father in the background. Beta, we care about you. We don't want you to get hurt. Her mother's voice was taut with anxiety. But I'm already hurt, Ma. I'm hurt. And you're asking me to let them go scot-free so that they can keep doing this over and over again. Another pause. Beta, your father has invested a lot of money in your education. You know how much a medical degree costs. I know, Ma, but do not spoil your future. One day, you will get married. Who will marry you knowing that you were involved in this incident? It was the only time in the 19 years of her life that a swear word escaped Neha's lips in front of her parents. Horrified, her mother had returned the phone to her father. If you do not do as you're told, we'll bring you home and get you married. It's your decision. The line had gone dead. Neha retrieved her mobile from her pocket and dialed Karen's number. No response. Again. With a pang of horror, Neha wondered if he had blocked her. I just want to know you're okay, she typed. Call me, please. Neha replaced the phone in her pocket, bracing herself for the next step. the auto rickshaw had reached its destination. Up ahead, Neha could see Ramu's internet cafe, the seedy corner shop at the end of the crowded market. As Neha clutched the pen drive in her pocket and headed towards the internet cafe, all she could hear was the sound of her pounding heart. "6 days ago, never have I ever," paused Raj, the lanky second-year student of Kasturba Medical College, had 2 girlfriends, or boyfriends, at the same time, as 4 boys and 2 girls brought their glasses to their lips for a drink. Neha sighed. This game was turning out to be duller than she'd imagined. It was either that, or she'd led a pretty boring life up to now, because her drink lay untouched on the table. Neha had never kissed in public. In fact, never kissed at all. Never smoked a cigarette. Never flunked an exam. Never cheated on a test. Never smoked a joint. Never sang or danced in public. Never traveled to a foreign country. Heck, this was the farthest she'd been from her home in New Delhi. So yes, her life had been pretty uneventful. Neha's eyes were drawn again to Karan, sitting across the round table. The colored disco lights from the dance floor brightening his face in all sorts of delightful ways. She wondered what he thought of her, or whether he thought of her at all. He seemed to prefer her company to anyone else's in college, and he often blushed in a childlike, innocent way whenever she caught him staring at her. But did he love her the way she loved him? 2 waiters appeared at their table, carrying plates of steaming paneer tikka, juicy chicken tikka, and colorful vegetable platters. The 12 hungry teenagers devoured the food within minutes and ordered another round of snacks. The game resumed with Priya, a portly girl with a shrill voice declaring, "Never have I ever been in love." Sounds faded and sights blurred as Neha's universe shrunk to the space between Karen's eyes. Those gorgeous brown eyes that were looking right at her and conveying feelings that neither of them had been able to express. As though mirroring each other's actions, Neha and Karan lifted their glasses and sipped their drinks, all the while looking at each other. Finishing his drink in a single gulp, Karan excused himself and went towards the exit of the pub. Taking a cue, Neha followed him outside, passing by a group of 30-something-year-olds with children's birthday caps balanced precariously on their heads, gyrating to Badshah's Abi to Party Shuru Hui Hai. The party has just begun. On the dance floor, Neha found Karan in the parking outside, leaning against his Maruti Swift, a lit cigarette in his hand. "All okay?" she asked, approaching him. "All good," he said, smiling. "So, are you enjoying your first party?" It was a running joke among her classmates that how Neha Kapoor, the supreme nerd, had artfully avoided all parties in the first year of college and focused solely on her studies, while the rest of her classmates had spent every weekend in a drunken stupor. "It's not so bad," she said. Karen chuckled. "It won't kill you to admit you're having a blast." The 3 drinks she'd had before they started playing the awful game dominated her senses. Neha wondered whether his lips had always been so full and red and juicy looking, or had she been blind the entire last year. Neha felt his hand on her arm, the pressure maddeningly exciting. His face was tantalizingly close to hers, and she could smell the cigarette on his breath. Wait a minute. Was he pushing her away? "You're drunk. Let's get you something to eat, shall we?" His voice seemed to be coming from just away, and as Neha followed him inside, she realized with a pang of mortification that she'd just tried to kiss him, and he'd pushed her away. Neha cursed silently as she took her seat at the table, avoiding looking in the direction she'd been looking all evening. She nudged her friend Kavya, sitting next to her. "Meet me in the bathroom," she whispered. Kavya peered at her friend in the semi-darkness of the pub. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, I just need to talk." Taking extreme care to look anywhere but at him, Neha ambled towards the bathroom, wishing she could disappear. She pushed open the door with the Queen of Hearts sign hanging on it and entered the empty ladies' bathroom. Roughly, she splashed some water on her face and gaped at her reflection in the mirror. 3 drinks, and she'd transformed into a girl who tried to kiss a boy in public, a boy who wasn't even her boyfriend. And the headache, oh, the mighty headache building up behind her eyes. She should have stopped at 1 drink. The whole party experience was so overrated. Neha wasn't sure she'd ever go to another party. What was that? Neha closed the tap and listened attentively. Somebody, a man, was yelling in the local language, and she couldn't understand a word. No, it was more than one man shouting. Loud, angry voices coming from just outside the bathroom door. The music stopped abruptly. The voices grew louder. What was going on? Before Neha could reach the door, a girl's scream pierced the air, sending a chill down her spine. With trembling, cold hands, Neha pushed open the door and peered through the tiny crack. The bright lights hurt her eyes. A group of 25 men, all in a high state of excitement, had barged into the pub and encircled her friends, their faces convoluted in fury. These young men were hollering at the teenagers in a language she couldn't understand while making aggressive, threatening gestures. All Neha could catch were the words drinking, smoking, girls, and loose morals. The second-year male students had formed a circle around the 4 girls, who huddled together in the center, terrified, while the group of belligerent men hurled abuses at them. Neha watched in horror as one of the men punched Karan on the nose. He stumbled backwards, holding his bleeding nose. It was at that precise moment that pandemonium erupted, with first flying through the air, crushing and snapping and breaking bones, a congealed mass of humanity shoving and yelling and crying, heads and limbs sticking out at grotesque angles. Neha tore her gaze away to look for the staff of the pub, the manager, somebody who could help, but there was nobody in sight. The older partygoers seemed to have fled, leaving the teenagers at the mercy of these goons, trying to be inconspicuous. Neha hunkered low on the floor and dialed Mather-uncle's number with shaky hands. It was 11:05 p.m. Mathur-uncle picked up on the third ring. "Neha, is everything okay?" His voice was alert and tense. Clearly, the call had been unexpected. Neha relayed everything as clearly and precisely as she could. "I'm dispatching units right away. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Lock the door. Stay in the bathroom." Neha closed her eyes, teardrops running down her cheeks. Her friends were being beaten to a pulp by these fanatics, and all she'd done was make a phone call while hiding in the bathroom, like the coward that she was. The screams were piercing her eardrums, firing bolts of agony to her brain. She couldn't just sit here and wait. She had to do something. But what could she do? If she went outside, she would get beaten up too. How could she help then? Neha glanced at her sneakers, grateful she wasn't wearing heels, and turned on her phone's camera. She opened the bathroom door and pressed record. The longer Neha witnessed the dastardly act, the more she felt infuriated and emboldened. She stepped out of the bathroom in her black, knee-length dress and her red sneakers, zooming in on the face of each attacker one by one. The girls had been yanked away from the boys and were being slapped and dragged by their hair by a group of 10 men who had surrounded them. On the other side, the boys were being brutally kicked and punched by another group. Neha drifted towards the exit of the pub while continuing to record the ghastly events. When she was sure she had captured every man's face on camera, Neha put her phone away and whistled loudly. Some men turned around and spotted her. They began yelling at each other. "Catch me if you can, assholes!" With these words, Neha turned on her heels and sped towards the exit of the pub. A group of men dashed after her, breaking the circle around the girls, who pushed the rest of the men out of their way and hurried to the exit. Fear pumped through Neha's veins like adrenaline, propelling her through the parking and towards the main road, deserted at this time of the night. 15 men were chasing her, bellowing and cursing and making obscene gestures. Neha wasn't sure how long she could outrun them or where she could go. Her college was 6 kilometers away, and even if she ran all that distance, she didn't think her pursuers would stop at the gate. As Neha turned left at a traffic signal, she could hear the police siren blaring, and just a moment later, the headlights of 2 police jeeps blinded her. She paused and spun around to see that the men had stopped, turned 180 degrees, and were now running away from her and the police jeeps. The fusty, windowless cubicle of the internet cafe contained a bulky monitor hooked to a CPU, at least 10 years old. As Neha plugged in the pen drive, her mobile began to ring. "Karan, where are you? Are you okay?" she said breathlessly, an ominous pause. "Neha, I'm okay. Listen carefully. You called to say goodbye," he said in a hoarse voice. "What? What happened?" "My parents have transferred me to another medical college in another city." "Why? Where are you going?" "I can't say." "Look, I'm sorry. Just stay away from this whole business, okay? It's the only way to stay safe. These people..." His voice trailed off. "Karan, I have to go now. Goodbye, Neha." The line went dead. Neha stared at her mobile, feeling like the whole world was spinning beneath her. A news app on her mobile flashed a news report about a statement by the founding member of the right-wing organization that had attacked them 6 days ago. These girls come from all over the country. Drink, smoke, and walk around in the night, spoiling the traditional girls of the city. Why should girls go to pubs? Are they going to serve their future husbands alcohol? Should they not be learning how to make rotis, Indian bread? Pubs and bars should be for men only. We wanted to make sure that all the women in the city are home by 7 p.m. Neha gaped at her phone in mute disbelief. The computer screen prompted her to create a new account. It was the anonymous account through which she intended to upload the video and broadcast it. Neha brought her hands to the keyboard and began typing the account name. A woman of loose morals. Author's note. To read about the true events that inspired this story, search for Mangalore pub attack. Sadly, the 26 men charged with the assault walked free due to lack of evidence, despite the assault being caught on camera. The sins that betray us. It was a warm Parisian evening, and fog rose from the Seine. It mingled with the smog of industry and clouded the gas street lights that dimly lit cobblestone streets. Beside the Seine, in the 4th arrondissement, was La Force prison, within which was the man Eugène Vidocq, whose wrists were shackled to the dungeon wall by cold steel chains and ankles bound by manacles. Eugène had black, curly hair and long, thick sideburns that taunted the corners of his mouth. He wore rags. His nose was still bruised from the scuffle. To detain him when 5 men were needed to pin him down and capture him. "Monsieur," he said, speaking to Julien de Veria, the Parisian chief of police. "I became a criminal the night my father had me arrested as a boy. When those gendarmes had turned up and taken him away to a cell that night, he had felt betrayed, devastated, and humiliated by his father. Above all, he had felt angry, and that anger had stayed with him all his life. a chip on his shoulder that had been ever present in his interactions and informed his life choices. Julian sat in the opposite corner of the dungeon on a wooden stool. His top hat lay in his lap, and his walking cane leant against the wall. He remained as still as a gargoyle. Your trial for treason commences at first light, and you wish to reminisce about your father. Do not waste my time. The flame of torches lining the walls flickered. A rat scurried between iron bars and retreated into the shadows. I have watched the guillotine sever the head of my dear friend César Herbeau. This cannot be my fate. He shook his head. The surprised look upon César's face as his head fell to the ground was forever etched in his memory. He could not shake it, could not recall how César used to smile, or the jovial times they had shared in local brothels. You have deserted from the army. You have stolen, you have forged, and you have destroyed marriages. Why would I care about your fate? Orange from the flickering flames glinted in Julian's eyes. A distant scream echoed around the chamber. It briefly registered to Eugène, like the sound of a new prisoner being subdued into his iron attire. Monsieur, I crave a life no longer on the run, said Eugène, thinking of his recent arrest. His estranged wife, who left him for a soldier, had found him back in Paris and reported him to the gendarmerie. He could never be free while the sins of his past stalked his being. Such is the fate of a criminal. Why would I care about what you crave? You are wasting my time, Julian said, snatching up his cane and smashing it against the stone wall. He stood. Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, let me tell you what I can do for you, so as not to waste any more of your time. Julian pushed out the backs of his jacket and sat carefully on his stool. Proceed. Thieves adore me. Hardened wretches esteem me. I drink and mingle in their circles. I have their trust. I know their hearts. I will gather their secrets and share them with you. We have informants already. Why would I need you, monsieur? I will be the best of them all. Of your informants, do any have as much esteem amongst the other criminals? Of your informants, have any been as cunning as me to escape prison so many times, even dressed as a nun to avoid detection? Sir, I will go to lengths those simpletons could not even imagine imagining. I will be your best informant, monsieur. I know this without a doubt, and I think you do too. I can't trust you, monsieur. When my late father had me arrested as a boy, my fate was sealed. In my mind, I became a criminal. It has taken my whole life to realize he did that out of love. I can be different. I can be of use to society. I can be the man my father knew I could be. I don't know if you can, monsieur. I've seen the end. I've seen my friend's head freed from his body by guillotine. I know that God's grace has all but kept me alive. I will be as devious as I was in crime, but use those skills to catch the criminals and make Paris safer. He shook his head. Just as the rats carry the plague, I fear you spread a vile truth. Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, just give me one last chance. Please. Julian was silent. We will hold off your trial in the morning. But know this, you are one mistake from execution. I want intelligence, actionable intelligence, or you'll be seeing your father sooner than you had imagined. He stood, gathered his cane, placed his top hat on his head, and waved to a guard outside the cell to let him out. Eugene put his head back on the stone wall and blinked away a tear. He would be tireless. He would be disciplined. He would use the tricks and the cons and the black arts he had learned. It was clear that Julian barely believed what was said, but that was fine, because he knew what was there in his heart. And it was true, and with time, he would prove it. He felt the anger that had fueled his heart for so long start to thaw. The miserable wretch that was his soul felt a flicker of hope. His father had loved him and had wanted him to be the best he could be, no matter how tragically he had tried to teach that lesson. And now he understood that it was only ever a lesson. He could become the man his father knew he could be. The voice thief. Tom, have you ever been in that situation when you are in a serious emergency, but you can't tell anyone? Well, if you have, you might have a similar story to mine. It all happened last year. I was at McDonald's for my best friend's birthday party when it happened. I was just walking around when a man in a Ronald McDonald costume walked past me. He looked at me and said, "Come here, child." Okay, that was a bit weird, and I was now questioning if this really was a man in a suit. So I kept my distance. That made him mad. I said, "Come here, child." He sneered. By this point, I was freaking out. This man was crazy. I had to warn the others. So that was when I did the only thing I could do. I screamed. That is, I tried to scream. Ronald looked at me and grinned. "Do you want your precious voice back?" he asked. I ran, unable to warn anyone of this monster that was all I could do. And now, 1 year on, I still am. Okay, I know you're wondering, what on earth does that have to do with anything? Well, McDonald's is about to close down, so they're throwing a goodbye party. I'm going to go. I know, my first party in a while. There is but one reason I'm going. My voice. I need my voice back. I would give anything just to hear it again. I'm getting this Ronald McDonald guy back for what he has done. Ronald, my trap has worked. For years I have stolen the voices of children and added them to my collection. Each child has had their life ruined, and they don't have the brains to write a note to warn everyone else. But I have now become bored with my collection, and I decided, why not just capture the kids? I do have an enormous basement to put them in, and who would miss those brats anyway? My plan is simple. Capture all the kids that go to the throwaway party. Tom, the party is on. There are sales everywhere I look. Kids run around like crazy. I try not to get sidetracked by all the sales, but soon find myself in the queue. That's when I saw him, Ronald McDonald. It was time for revenge. Ronald, I can't believe how dumb this kid is. After I took his voice, he still comes to the party. Oh, well, I guess I'm in luck. So far, I have caught 30 kids. I'm going to give this one a jump scare. Tom, wait. Where on earth did that guy go? I sigh. Maybe I might see him again soon. That's when I felt a tap on my back. I turned around, and there he was, Ronald McDonald, his lips a blood-red color. Come, child, he says. It's all a repeat of the first time we met. I forget revenge and run. And I won't stop this time. Ronald, the kid took the bait. He's running straight into my trap. Now it's time for some fun. Tom, okay. I know you're wondering how I ended up in this trap. But not even I know. I hear a creak as Ronald and McDonald enter the room. He holds my voice in one hand and a knife in the other. Do you want your precious voice back? He asked with a grin of pure evil. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I had no voice. That was when Ronald did something horrid. He killed my voice. He stabbed it. My voice screamed, and my throat went numb. My mission had failed. Ronald laughed, a wicked laugh. It was the type of laugh that freezes fire and melts ice. Then it occurred to me, I was going to die. Ronald, this kid has been an interesting type. The type that I like to turn into food. I seized him by the throat and carried him down a long passageway to the food processor. What food would I turn him into? A child nugget. Perfect. What a snack they will be. I'm drooling just thinking about it. Time to drop him in. Tom, I can't believe this. Pure cannibalism. Ronald let go. I fell down through the machine, landing in a pile of breadcrumbs. Before I could relocate, a huge roller ran over the top of me. I was knocked out cold. When I woke, I was in a freezer, marinating. Ronald McDonald sure has a bad recipe, I thought. It was cold. I was surprised I wasn't dead yet. Then, out of nowhere, a claw grabbed me and I still shudder to think about it. It dunked me in grease. The grease was boiling. And that's when I realized I was being deep fried. I could feel life draining from my body. I tried to climb out of the grease, but it was too slippery. I was going to be a snack for Ronald McDonald. By now, I was just a blob of food in the universe. My breathing slowed, and with 5 minutes left, I would be cooked. Every second became a struggle. I was dying. 1 minute left. You can do this, I told myself. 30 seconds left. You can do this, I said, between each gulp of air. 10 seconds. I gave up. The heat swallowed me up the way Ronald McDonald will when I come out of here. The truth was clear. I couldn't do this. Ronald, ding. The door creaked open and slammed down on the floor. Out came my child nuggets. I licked my lips. Tasty. They smell delicious. I lifted one up and took a bite. Crunchy. Soon, I have eaten them all. They should be on the menu. Oh well, I guess it's time to go upstairs. You never know who might be up there, just waiting to be taken. The dark night. A shadow of a figure was running in the dark. All around were tall trees, and only a small fraction of the moon's rays got through the canopy. The ground was a black void, with no difference between the dirt and the tree roots. A pack of wolves howled in the distance. With every gust of wind, the tree branches and leaves banged and rustled like a toddler playing with pots and pans. Under all of that was a low mumble, rhythmic, like a drum cadence, but ghostly in origin. The figure trips. Eli. The scene quakes. Eli. The moon disappeared. Elijah. Blinding fluorescent light replaced the woods. 13-year-olds Eli and Tyler were sitting in the mall food court, eating dinner across from each other. Eli's heart was pounding in his ears, and his hands trembled. Tyler put her hands on his. Eli, what did you see? Eli repeatedly blinked back at her as the fog lifted from his head. I don't really know. Come on, she said, slinging on a side bag as she raised from her chair. You can think about it on our way home. I don't want to miss the bus. Without a word, Eli cleaned up their table and carried the tray away. As soon as his hand was free, he reached for her hand. They walked away from the tables, with Tyler locking her arm from Eli's swinging. Not too many people were left in the mall. There were a few stragglers around the pop-up stands, but most were lacing their arms through jacket sleeves by the exits. However, two men, a twig-like one with close-to-the-head African curls, and a log-like one with slicked hair, mostly to one side, didn't fit in either group. They stood off the side, away from everyone else, surveilling, looking for something. Their cookies and cream vibe didn't make Tyler divert their path. She was right until they stepped into their way. Excuse us, Tyler Woodlock and Elijah Krieger, the the twig one asked through a British accent. Tyler pulled Eli closer. "No, sorry," she answered, starting to walk around them, with her and Eli's fingers turning red. "Government agents?" The other man stopped them, flipping open his budget case. "Miss Woodlock." The Brit slid closer as Tyler gave out a nervous laugh. She pulled it together with a devious smirk. "All right, agents." She stepped closer. "But one thing first." "Yes," the man said, putting his budget back. Tyler gave the Brit, the fitter one, a stiff kick in the shin. With him on the floor and his partner stunned, she yelled, "Run, Eli," giving Eli a push start. Eli sprinted off, getting a head start as Tyler toppled over a supply case. He headed for the loading docks, a path Tyler forced him to memorize for an emergency like this. As ordered, he ran without looking back. He nearly ran off the truck port in his mindset. He jumped down. Falling on his hands, he looked like a frog. He couldn't find the strength to stand, but he walked, half crawled, to the rear of the building. Collapsing against the brick, he took his chance to look back. She wasn't there. He stayed twisted around the corner, waiting for Tyler. All of a sudden, bright light beamed onto him. Drawing Eli's attention, the voice called out, "Stay there!" They boomed like a drill sergeant. He clambered to his feet and did the total opposite as the voice commanded. A stampede of boots followed Eli as he jotted into the wooded area on the other side of the loading lane. The fall night grew darker as he was chased farther in the woods. With every gust of wind, the tree branches and leaves banged and rustled. Their movement shifted and blocked the moon as if in a game of peekaboo. This and the uneven ground made Eli bobble like a pinball. The voice rang out again. "Get him! Don't let him get away." It allured him to look back. A light show of flashlights was going on behind. Even with all the light, however, the people remained shadows. A gopher tunnel tripped Eli up a bit. As he looked up, a pair of amber eyes, low to the ground, stared at him from a few yards away. The progression of howls following the encounter made Eli run fast. He couldn't hear the boots anymore. He would turn his head a few degrees before forcing it straight. The last one sent him flying into the ground. Tyler peered over a row of bushes. Eli laid on the ground, with only his chest moving up and down. As soon as she raised from her position, two men came into view. One went to Eli's side, and the other pulled out a radio. Asset found, about 4 clicks due east of the loading dock. The radio guy looked around the perimeter as the second man searched Eli's pocket. Tyler fished around in her bag. In the dark, the inside of her bag was a void. She felt cold metal as more men appeared. The one left Eli's side. "The cards aren't here, sir." Eli let at a moan as he began to stir. "Bring him. We'll find out soon where they are." He turned and started the procession away. Radio and Pocket Man gave each other a glance before pockets threw Eli over his shoulder. The remaining men followed. Tyler took her hand out of her back. She fell to her knees, with her hands on her face. As the first tears started falling, she wiped them away with her fists clenched. She ran back to the mall, heading towards the parking lot. Her head bubbled back and forth, looking at the cars and people. Losing her structure, she fell back on her knees. She started crying again, right before her ears perked up. Snapping her head around, she saw the two agents from inside. "We lost, ma'am," she heard the agent who threw his badge in her face. They were ready to run. A grin grew across her face. She spined back, with her attention being grabbed by the rear of the car she fell in front of. The license read, CA exempt 387690. She had seen enough of those when the police raided their Romani dwellings. The odds of that being their car, she didn't know. Not did she know the odds of them automatically unlocking it far enough away that she could climb into the trunk before they were close enough to see. The two agents and their unknown guest arrived at their motel on the outskirts of town almost an hour after Eli was taken. The building wasn't too big, just 2 rows with 8 or so doors each. Behind each were a single room and a bath. The agents went first. Tyler waited until she couldn't hear them anymore before pushing out the back row cushion. Sitting on the floor of the car, she watched as they entered a room with the number 6 on the door. She opened the door carefully so she wouldn't hit the next car. In the same manner, she closed it without a sound. She strategically stepped as she reached back into her bag. After peering into the room's window, she saw the 2 agents with their backs to the door. There seemed to be nothing but a wall in front of them. But that didn't bother Tyler. She walked right in and pulled her hand out of her bag before slamming the door shut. The agents jumped if shots had been fired. They found that they weren't too far off. Dropping their phone, they were face to face with a gun barrel. "Hello again, miss." "Woodlock," one agent said, through his British accent as they snuck for their weapons. "Don't patronize me," she said, cocking her gun. "Do you think you can pull yours before I shoot the both of you? I've already proved I have grace under pressure." They both bring their hands forward. "What do you want?" the other one asked. "Well, Agent Vincent Petrov, I'm thinking about a trade." Flaunting his arrogant British accent, he asked, "What would you have that we would?" Cutting him off, Tyler pulled out a deck of tarot cards. "Really, I might be a child, but I'm not an idiot." "That still doesn't answer my question," Vincent said. "I want Eli back." "Excuse me, even if I believe for a second you're not with the men who took him, you bring him back to me, and you get these no-so-meaningless cards, and we all live happily ever after." The agents gave each a glance. "Let me make this easier. You do this, or I shoot you and go on my merry way." Eli was groggy, teetering between awake and asleep for the car ride, though no one could tell through the blindfold, nor from his position in the trunk. They had tried his wrists and ankles to stop the little fight he had in him. No kicking, no hitting, no running. More helpless than he was without Tyler. He was asleep when the car stopped, but was jarred awake when one of the men yanked him out. Being bobbled around, his face was red and breathed deeply, trying to keep dinner in. The only relief came when he was dropped to the floor. After the bang of the door, Eli was left to wait once more in the dark. He pulled at his ropes, only stopping when the burning turned into paper-cut sensations. No closer to freedom, he crumbled, stopped straining, stopped fighting, stopped holding it together. Back at the motel, Tyler sat crisscrossed on the first bed from the door, yanking her locket back and forth on its chain. She stared at the agents that sat on the other side of the room. She tried to hear what they were saying, but they put the same effort into the opposite. "What are we going to do, Miles?" Vincent asked. "Play the game. Easier said than done. We know when, where, and a fair idea of by who. The who is what scares me. I would be more scared of the lass if we don't." "I agree with Agent Walker." A woman, dressed in a white skirt suit with her dark hair in a spiral braid, said just inside the room. "Ms. Isles?" Vincent jumped out of his seat. Tyler did the same. She stared at the woman, jotting a glance at the door, then back. No one heard the door open or closed. "Hello, miss." "Woodlock," Ms. Isles said, raising her hand. "Hi," Tyler said, more like a question than snipe, without shaking her hand. "Well, do you want the good news or the bad news?" "Good would be best," Vincent toddled. Isles looked at Tyler. "Find the boy. Bring him back. Finish your original mission," she said through a smile. She began to walk away. She already had her hand on the doorknob before any of them stopped her. "What about the bad news?" Miles shouted. "Work with her, Walker. Work with her," she said, leaving before and without argument. Eli had no idea how long he was asleep for, but when he opened his eyes, he was met with a blinding light. He stretched out to find his legs and arms unbound. Panicked and joyed, he shuddered and jostled. He missed the hand on the wrist. A shadow eclipsed the bright light. "Do you mind not moving?" The voice sounded familiar. With the light masked, Eli could start to see the room. First, the man kneeling in front of him, graying hair, flannel button-up shirt, and placid blue eyes. Then small red spots on the gray cement floor. And last, white bandage roll, some on his right wrist, and the man wrapping more onto his left. "I think you've bled enough on my floor for today," the man said, finishing his work. "Your floor? Don't be put off by the casual dress. I'm the boss here, and that's why I can offer you this. You answer all my questions, and you can go home to your gypsy family, to your sweet wife, Tyler, without any more harm." What do you want to know? Eli asked as he sat up. Why don't we start with something simple? Why did you run away from me at the loading docks? Said the man who blared a flashlight in Eli's eyes earlier that night. Vincent sat at the small two-person table, glaring at a street map and a calculator. How is it going, Vince? Miles asked, leaning over Vincent's shoulder. Not great. Knowing that they took Elijah 75 minutes ago, and assuming they stayed within 5 miles per hour of the speed limit, they can be anywhere within and around 50 miles away from the mall. That's a big area. You don't know the half of it. Miss Woodlock. Tyler, she yelled at him. My name's Tyler. Tyler. He put his hands up halfway. Can you give us anything? Car model, direction, anything? I was a little busy, trying not to get caught myself. Trying to find you fools. If we try to search all of this, Vincent pulled Miles closer and lowered his voice. We won't get to him in time. Don't talk like that, Tyler yelled, with a little cry behind it. You start talking like that, and things will end that way. She fell back onto the bed, with her hands on her face. Miles glared down at Vincent, with his arms crossed. He kept that position as he walked over to the bed. Sitting next to her, he put his arm around her, with an air bubble between them. Thanks, she said, whipping her hands out from her face. It's getting late. Why don't you rest for a bit? We don't want our sharpshooter's eyes heavy. I've been one for the last 10 years. But, she paused, bringing up her watch on her right wrist. Watch, she continued, jumped off the bed. What? Miles followed her towards Vincent. Watch. She started searching her bag. I got Eli a watch for our first anniversary. He never takes it off. She presented the watch's instructions. And it has GPS. Anniversary? They asked. During their time together, the man asked Eli an array of questions. Most about trivial personal things to get Eli relaxed and uncoil from his balled-up position. It was working, too. He was as relaxed as if he was home. His eyes glassed over as the questions droned on. The room faded away. A dark place appeared. A spotlight shines on the center. A glint of metal moved in from the bottom. A gun, revolver, a white hand, a flannel sleeve. The hand snapped the bullet holder back into the gun. It aimed. Destroying the image, the shot fired caused Eli to scream and hold his ear. His ears were still ringing when the man tried to calm him down. Eli saw what he expected was on his own face, on the man's. The man removed Eli's hands. His mouth moved, but Eli couldn't hear it. He yanked himself away. Why are you asking me all these questions? What do you want? The man had a blank face. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. After straightening his shirt, he said, "You have something that belongs to me." "I don't have anything." Eli shuddered. "Not now, but..." He exhaled heavily through his nose. "Tyler gave you something. A set of tarot cards." "I don't know where they are," he stuttered. "Well, it's the last question. you have to answer. So give it a good thought. They could be anywhere. In the woods where you chased. Back in the mall where the other two did. He said, trying to put the brakes in his mouth. Sir, you know where they are. No, I don't. Yes, you do. He pulled a gun from his back waistband. Tell me. Eli's mouth opened, but the only crashing noises came. The sound made both of them jot their attention towards the door. The man gritted his teeth. The other two. Staring down at his gun, he weighed it in his hand before bringing it down on Eli's head. Eli fell to the floor again. The last thing he saw before the backs of his eyelids was the man's black shoes walking out the door. The black gave away to wisps, at first merging into cacti and sand. They whirled by through the view from a car window. Tyler sat on the opposite side, smiling back. In the front seat sat Miles and Vincent. The whole picture felt loving and had a dream-like glow. It faded into a face full of fabric. Before he could freak out like his earlier ones, a hand touched his shoulder. You're all right now. You're safe, Tyler cooed. In a quick movement, Eli raised to hug her, nearly bringing them to the floor. Regaining her structure, she hugged back. In their embrace, Eli missed Miles and Vincent standing off to the side, smiling down at them. Unoccupied guest rooms were always hiding things. No one starts out wanting a guest room. It's usually an office first, but then you got fired and can't look at it anymore, so you throw a bed in it that you'll never sleep in. Sometimes it's a kid's room, but they've moved out into a college dorm room. It used to be storage, but then the divorce happened, leaving it depressingly empty. A studio for recording music, but the bass player was in a car accident, and the band broke up. Guest rooms are rarely ever intentional. It's more of a ritual, something society has deemed necessary. The presumption that someone wants to stay with you and your new husband. The poor friend grits their teeth, trying to pretend they can't hear you having sex, trying to make the stiff pillows into something they actually want to lay on, trying to breathe through the Yankee Candle Vanilla Wafer air freshener that's plugged into the wall. The window sticks after an inch, and they can't get it up all the way. They unplug it after everyone is asleep. But the smell has been cloistered in the room for so long that it will never smell like anything else. They put the pillow on top of their face and try to sleep. I stood in the doorway to this guest room without entering it. Untouched rooms give you answers. They offer secrets. This one had last been occupied by a dead girl lying face down in a pool of blood. I found out about the case through the police. That never happened. We didn't get along. Yeah? I barked into phone. A landline I had installed myself. Cell phones bothered me. Is this Alma? It was Detective Herbert Ross. He knew it was me. "What did you want?" I said, trapping the phone between my ear and shoulder as I took a kettle of hot water off the stove and poured it in my favorite chipped mug with my favorite raspberry tea. If this was about the parking tickets I'd never paid, I still wasn't going to pay them. If this was to call me in about the robbery I solved before them, I wasn't going to tell them how I did it. A girl's dead. I set the kettle down a little too hard. Hot water sloshed around inside. I stared at the swirling steam coming up from the cup. I wouldn't be able to drink it now, and I frowned. The cops never called for my help. I usually embarrassed them by figuring their cases out for them. As a PI, it was rare to get a call like this. "You need me?" "Yeah." "Can you come?" I hesitated for only a moment. "Yeah." "What's the address?" 325 111th Ave, Blaine. "I'll be there in half an hour." I hung up and reached for the tea, hoping I could snag one sip. Burnt tongue be damned. The tea bag had broken. Blaine was a little forgotten neighborhood, 30 minutes from Minneapolis, where I lived. The town used to be nice and neighborly, where kids biked until dark and people shoveled driveways for the elderly. Now, it was dirty. Every house had this gray dinginess to it, like everyone had collectively decided one year to stop taking care of things. Lawns were overgrown. Cars were rusting away. Big lilac bushes and weeping willows were being taken out or cut down. It was like an anti-homeowners association, uglifying until everything was up to code. I showed up to the house where only one police car remained. There was yellow tape in front of the door. A crowd of people stood a few feet away, muttering. I looked the crowd over quickly, but no one stood out. I lifted the tape and went into the house. Herbert was standing right inside, apparently waiting for me. "Body has already been taken." He grunted. "That's fine." I didn't get much from dead bodies. I knew Herbert would tell me anything I needed to know, because he had called me. Still, this was awkward. We both were uncomfortable, and it was obvious by how we refused to make eye contact, our hands shoved in our pockets. Husband found her face down in the guest room, stabbed multiple times, said the doors were all locked, no sign of forced entry. "You asked the neighbors if anyone was skulking around?" Herbert nodded. "Nothing out of the ordinary. Seems like everyone keeps to themselves." "What did she do?" "Who?" "The victim." "What did she do for work?" "Oh, her name's Noelle Sharp." "The writer?" I asked, bewildered. She was known for gritty romance novels, turned deadly. Not my thing, but I knew her name. "Yeah, I didn't know she lived here." He nodded again. "They moved here a few years ago." "Geez, why?" Herbert shrugged. "Husband, name Magnus, works for a painting company. She seems to make more dough." "Where is he?" "Already down at the station. Guy's pretty numb. Won't say much." "Yeah, well." His wife was murdered. I wondered if Magnus had convinced Noelle to move here. If he had done that thing that men do when they feel like their wife, or any woman really, was doing better than them. So he tried to put her in a box, make her talents and abilities small and manageable, easy to swallow. How many shouting matches had they been through before Noelle had conceded to move into this shit box in the middle of Shitsville? "Can I have a few minutes?" I asked. Herbert nodded. I surveyed the entrance area. Stairs right in front of us, leading down into a dark, wet-smelling basement. A tiny hall leading into a kitchen. Living room to the left, dining room to the right. I gave the first floor a once-over. Dirty dishes in the sink. Magazines on the coffee table. The trash was empty. No bag. I went up the stairs and found the main bedroom, bathroom, and the guest room. In the middle of the guest room was a huge blood stain. It was flecked around the room, on the walls, on the bed. The stain was dark against the gray of the carpet. I surveyed the room. One bed, one desk with a small lamp and wooden chair, one plush armchair near the window, overhead light, fixture, fan. There was a closet and a nearly empty bookcase, short and pudgy. Maybe something that one of them had been dragging around for years, couldn't bear to get rid of. Some furniture held on to it. I walked in and thought about the room. The carpet was gray, the walls were white, but it was an off-white. It was like the white had been darkened by something. I sat down in the armchair and looked around, pretended I was staying there. I went over and turned the light on. The fan spun slowly above me. I sat back down in the armchair and looked some more. I realized it had been blue. The walls had been blue, but they had been poorly painted over, once, in a hurry. I got up from the chair and went over to the closet. Inside, there was a plastic bin full of wrapping paper. There was a broken vacuum, a box of empty bags to be used for gifts, and a stack of towels and blankets for guests. I reached out and touched the unused things, linens that had never been unfolded. So, no guests, or maybe guests slept on the couch. And this room, like many guest rooms, was useless. I leant down at the carpet in the closet. I took a small pair of scissors I kept on me and cut off some of the carpet threads, slipping them in my pocket. I sat on the bed, and it dipped, like it was trying to swallow me. The room smelt of dust, and the duvet was covered in butterflies. I lay down and stared up at the ceiling. What was missing in this room? And then I bolted upright and stared at the blank walls and realized there was less dust in a few places. Sections where things had been removed. Pictures. There were no pictures. Herbert was standing outside, trying to get the crowd to leave. I stormed out. "Are you sure this wasn't a robbery?" I asked. Herbert looked over his shoulder. annoyance on his face at my outburst. It made the dispersing crowd turn, new interest compelling them to stay. Nothing has been taken. How do you know? I asked. Husband confirmed. You don't think, just maybe. He's a little fragile at the moment. Herbert shrugged. I'll have him do another walkthrough. I told him I was going to need to come back to the house again. I needed to think. He told me to call him first, before he did. We both knew I wouldn't. That I looked up Noel Sharp on the internet. I found relatives and close friends, and I called and talked to them. Everyone had lovely things to say. I asked about her writing and her hobbies. When I brought up the husband, people also had nothing but good things to say. The mother was the only one who sputtered on and on about how that low life tricked my daughter into marrying him. Worthless career, no family money. She could have married a Rockefeller. I didn't tell her Rockefellers didn't spend time in Minnesota. I found their bank information, social media accounts, insurance. He had taken her name. Previously had been Magnus Brown. He had a brother named Leonard. I called and talked to some more people and asked if they ever had parties. Who were the best friends? Who stayed in that guest room? No one had much to say. There had been a housewarming party, but never another party after that. I called Leonard and asked him about Magnus and Noel. Leonard was still shocked about Noel's murder, kept going on and on about how Magnus adored her. Noel was such a sweet girl. She was so kind to everyone. Great cook. I never read her books, but I knew she was good. Magnus just loved her. I told him to call me if he thought of anything else. I could see from their joint bank account that there was voodoo trouble. There always was. I carefully read through credit card statements, but nothing interesting sprung out. Not even a transaction from a dirty website. I sat by the window in my apartment, smoking until daylight. I waited a few days before going back to the crime scene. I called Herbert on the way to the house, and he told me basic things that I could have guessed. Death due to blood loss, internal injuries, no fingerprints on the knife or around the house, doors locked, nothing broken. Husband staying with a friend. Husband's alibi checks out. Yeah, he was painting a town over. I have the address. I'll take it, I said. I could hear the frown over the phone. I already cleared it with the homeowner. You called me, I said with a shrug that I knew he could hear. He rattled off the address, and I wrote it on a Walgreens receipt. I stopped at a Home Depot and stood in front of the paint chip wall. I stared at the colors, the very berry purple and Derbyshire green. I took out the carpet clippings and held them up over the grays. The carpet color was rock candy. I was at a shabby, buttercup yellow, run-down house that had not been painted in a long time. An old man in an old red sweater answered the door. He was hard of hearing, and his eyes were swallowed up so far into his face that I figured he couldn't see well either. I I told who I was. Alma Savage, private investigator, and asked if he had made an appointment to have his house painted. He talked about how this nice fellow had painted his house, how they had drunk beer and talked about baseball. I was confused for only a moment before a young woman with a pixie face and curly hair interrupted us. "My father has Alzheimer's," she explained. "The house was painted a long time ago." I asked her if either of them had talked to the police. She looked confused. The old man had been the one on the phone with Herbert. I parked in front of the Sharp house and called people again and asked them to tell me things they remembered about Noel and Magnus. Memories were precious and often wrong, but sometimes they were the only clues one had to go on. Kathy Green was Noel's best friend. She hadn't been able to talk to me the first time I called. Now she was somber, and her voice wobbled, but she talked to me. I had dinner with them every month. Magnus cooked the best meals. Magnus, I repeated. What about Noel? Nope. Noel didn't like cooking. Whenever we were alone, we always ate out. Kathy kept talking, clearly happy to have someone to talk to. They wanted kids so bad, but Noel had a miscarriage, and they never tried again. Magnus couldn't bear it. Had a vasectomy. I asked her when this happened. She said 4 or 5 years ago. I hung up and went back into the house, walking into the guest room and staring at it, realizing it was perfect size for a nursery. The schooner blue walls that had been painted over with Acacia white, the missing pictures, rock candy carpet, Parimbe. I lay on the couch in the living room and determined it was too uncomfortable for someone to sleep on overnight. No one stayed with the Sharps. I called Herbert, still lying on the lumpy couch. "I need you to check something for me." "Alma?" "Yes." "I need you to tell me if she was pregnant." "Noel?" "Yes." "I'll call you back." I went into the main bedroom and looked over the dresser, where receipts and change and dollar bills and earrings lay. I looked in their closet at all of Noel's comfortable writing clothes and Magnus's paint-covered clothes. I found photo albums and thumbed through them. Nothing but happy smiles. I looked for medication in the bathroom. Nothing. I dug into drawers and looked through cabinets. Finally, in the garage, I found boxes, unlabeled. I knew it was what I was looking for. I opened them. There were 7 bikes, none matching, all different sizes. Each one had bright pink or bright blue toys, blankets, onesies, pacifiers. Each one contained a cross-stitched rectangle, homemade. Flora Sharp, Theodore Sharp, Maisie, Cooper, Rachel, Kevin. There were photos of the finished rooms, walls different each time. Pinks named Azalea, Flower, Teaberry, blues named Gentle Aquamarine and Breathtaking. I looked down at the boxes, at all the attempts, all the miscarriages. Kathy Green didn't know about this. Her best friend status was weak, watered down because Noelle was too broken or embarrassed or just didn't think it was anyone's business. No one slept on the couch. No one slept in the guest room. I surveyed the rest of the garage and saw some large, framed photos shoved in the corner behind a lawnmower that was covered with a tarp. I went over and pushed the lawnmower away. They were prints of Noelle's book covers, the missing pictures, and there was a bloody thumbprint on the edge of one, her third book, Dangerous Illusion. My phone rang. I answered it, hands shaking. Was she? I asked, throat dry. She was pregnant. Fuck, I muttered. What? Magnus had a vasectomy a few years ago. We'll confirm that on our end. And if you do? I asked. We both knew the answer. If he'd had the operation, it meant Noelle had cheated. It was motive? Doubt. I found Leonard's apartment the next day. When he opened the door, he was in a wrinkled t-shirt and boxers. It was 3:30 in the afternoon. His eyes were red, and his hair was unkempt. I told him who I was, and he let me in. He gave me a beer. It was warm. I chugged half of it in one gulp. When I swallowed, I asked, "So how long were you sleeping with her?" Leonard pretended to look confused. I waited. Then, after 4.5 minutes of silence, he put his face in his hands and started crying. I loved her so much. Magnus was always complaining, and she would come over and vent, and we'd drink, and we never meant to. Noelle was pregnant, I told him. His teary eyes grew smaller, beadier. Noelle had found out that day. I pushed on. She left the pregnancy test in the trash, and Magnus found it. You know he had a vasectomy. I didn't wait for him to confirm. Noelle was in the guest room, looking at the nursery she never got, hoping it would work this time. It could be you. And Magnus found her, killed her, and took down the photos of her books. Couldn't bear to see them. All her accomplishments. She had money. Her name meant something. And now his own brother was fucking his wife. How did you know that Magnus isn't staying with you? He's staying with a friend. He hates you. No. He choked out, shaking his head like that would shake the words out. She only cooked for you. When she came over here to vent and drink and fuck, she'd cook for you. She never did that with him. What do I do? He asked, drowning in how much he hated himself. I looked around the drab apartment before turning my eyes back to him, shrugging. Ever thought about painting the place? The cursed town. Content warning. Murder, suicide. He walked up through the dusty road which led to the small town of Tamans. It was twilight, and a light wind was blowing. Far away, the crop plantations acquired a greenish-orange color due to the light of the sun. On the other side, one could catch a faint glimpse of the Tiemans Church, with its tall steeple standing majestically high up in the sky. The yellow-orange hue of the sky washed the town, and the muddy red road was illuminated with a touch of gradient yellow. The whole town looked peaceful, and surprisingly, nobody was outside their houses. He entered the town and looked at the banyan tree in front of him. It had remained much the same. He looked up at the houses and walked towards them. Darkness was falling now. The red-orange hue was slowly swept away, and a dark blue color entered, only with a touch of crimson at its bottom. Shadows fell here and there, creating a spooky atmosphere, and he quickened his pace, as if to avoid the evil spell cast by the shadows of the houses. The moon came up, not too bright, for clouds were starting to surround it from all sides. He glanced upwards and realized that he had to take shelter somewhere. Rainfall could occur any time now. He walked through the dusty and muddy road and looked here around for inns, but there were none. Finally, he found a big apartment, which was deserted. He let out a sigh of relief and walked up the stairs and entered the apartment. It was evident that the apartment was still under construction work. It was not completed. However, years of neglect had withered away the raw smell of the brick walls, and small plants could be seen growing almost everywhere. All of them had a feeling of evil in them. The brick walls, the plants, the floors, and even the ceiling. It was like they had witnessed a lot of sad events and were telling him not to go further inside the house. The house itself was spooky, with its large corridors and almost no rooms. A huge, round staircase led to the other floors. The grayish appearance of the apartment matched perfectly with his gray and withered t-shirt and pants. He went up the staircase and reached the terrace. It was broad and wide, and one could see the beautiful town stretched before it. He looked down and was surprised to see an old woman with a lantern standing in the doorway of the apartment, waving her hands to call him. He descended the staircase and ran out of the apartment to meet the old woman. The woman was short in stature and had gray hair, with sometimes a tint of black in them. Her face was wrinkled, and she looked at him through her cat-green eyes, piercingly. "What are you doing here?" she asked coldly. "I am a visitor, and I came here for certain business matters. I could not find any inn to spend the night in, so I came here," he said. She looked at him suspiciously, and then said, "Okay, you better come with me. This place is not good, especially at night." He nodded his head and followed the old woman. He was cold with fear and could not understand what was happening. He followed her till they reached a cottage, and the old woman asked him to enter. He went inside and enjoyed the warmth of the fire which was lit. He sat down on a sofa, and the woman came to her with a candle. She placed the candle on the table and handed him a plate. "You must be hungry. Here, have some food. You better not go to the apartment anymore." "Why?" he asked. "It's a long story. I have seen too much of this world to remember happy deeds. Most are evil." "What do you actually mean? Do you want to hear?" "Yes, I do." She took a long, deep breath and then began. "Long ago, when I was about 17 years of age, there used to live a plantation owner named Hamilton. He had a lot of money and was very rich. You see those plantations? All those were Sir Hamilton's. He was not only rich, but kind and generous too. He used to donate with open hands. He had a beautiful wife, 4 daughters, and 1 son. However, naturally, his neighbors were very jealous of him and despised him. He did not care that much for that. But one day, his neighbors attacked his family. His daughters were of almost my age then, and the son was only a baby. They killed his daughters and his wife, but somehow Hamilton and his son were able to escape. Why did not Hamilton inform the police?" he asked. "There was no evidence against the neighbors. He had nothing to do. I later heard that he had fled somewhere to Canada. But how does it relate to the apartment?" The old woman sighed. Her green eyes glistened, and she said the apartment was being made by Hamilton. He wanted to turn it into a hospital. "Yes, but how does that matter anyway?" Rain had started falling heavily, and the fire and candle went out. The 2 people were left in total darkness. However, he could still see the old woman's eyes glistening. The old woman said, "For the past few years, there had been a lot of suicides there. Many girls of around 16, 17 years are committing suicide there. It all started with the daughter of Mrs. Morpin. She jumped from the terrace we were standing a few minutes ago. The second case was of Mrs. Rayon's daughter. She was found hanging from the chandelier one morning, her face white and terror-stricken. He was taken aback and looked at the old woman with wide and fearful eyes. Lightning struck, illuminating the whole room for a moment, and he could see the old woman's face, ugly, wrinkled with a strong, piercing glance, which was almost witch-like. He wanted to run out of the house, but some strange power kept him rooted to his seat. The old woman said, "You better go to sleep now. I guess you had a very tiresome day." The old woman showed him his bedroom, and he fell down on his bed, immediately asleep. The next morning, when he woke up, he could see the sun shining brilliantly outside. He heaved himself up and went to the living room. The old woman was preparing coffee. She handed him a cup, and he sat down on the sofa. He drank from the cup the delicious, thick cappuccino and felt refreshed. He almost forgot all the horrible incidents from yesterday night. "Where do you want to go today? I can show you the way. It is evident that you are new to this place, as you were talking about inns in here. I have heard about Kingsman's Place here. Can you please take me there?" "Kingsman's Place? Okay, I will. It is a business center here. When do you want to go? About 9:30. What do you say? Please prepare a packed lunch for me. Of course. Get ready then. He went back to his bedroom and took out his suitcase. He looked at himself in the mirror. He was middle-aged, but still, he looked pretty young. He brought out a coat, shirt, and pant, and put it on. He looked the perfect businessman. After having breakfast, the two went out. On the way, they came across the Flint River. There he saw some girls whispering and talking together. One of them was extremely beautiful. Her fair skin with an orange tint made one remember pure milk. Her eyes were a deep blue, and she had beautiful black eyelashes. Her cheeks were pink, and her lips were a light red. Her mass of curls was thrown at her back, and she wore a pretty green dress. Her hands were well-toned, and her legs were slender and well-shaped. She looked a pretty picture. He stared at her for some time, and then she turned to the old woman, and pointing to the girl, he asked, "Who is that girl?" The old woman glanced at the girl and then said, "She is Mr. Trudeau's daughter." "Pretty, isn't she?" "Yes," he said. "What is her age?" "About 17. He sighed and gestured at the old woman to move forward. They reached Kingsman S. Place, and the old woman left him there with his lunchbox. He did not wait there. As soon as the old woman was out of sight, he started running. He did not stop until he reached the old building. He entered and went up to the terrace. The terrace was absolutely empty. Despite being so large, the parapets were very low, and there were high risks of falling to death in case of an accidental slip. Unlike the rest of the house, almost no plants were there on the terrace due to some unknown reason. He roamed here and there on the terrace. He stepped very carefully, and whenever he looked down, he was sick at the sight of houses so far down below. He hated heights and was afraid of them. He went downstairs and waited. "You know, Laura, I will go to Grandma Fontaine's house today." The words kept ringing in his mind. To reach Grandma Fontaine's house, she had to cross this building. There she was coming, alone. Nobody was with her. He waited silently, and as soon as she came in front of the apartment, he gripped her hand and pulled her inside. Before she could scream, he put a handkerchief under her nose, and smelling the chloroform, she fell unconscious. He now prepared for it. He dragged her upstairs to the terrace and carefully washed her face. He then threw her down the parapet, and she landed with a loud thud sound. Dead. Yes, she was dead. Blood was flowing from her, and her pretty face was peaceful. He quickly fled from the place before anybody could see him. He did not return to the old woman's house. He kept walking towards the outskirts of the town. It would take him almost 3 hours to get out. He had seen his own sisters and mother get killed in front of him. Those Morpins, Rayons, Trudeaus, and Greys have killed them out of jealousy. He and his father had somehow fled. But after some time, his father also died. He died saying, "Kill Morpin, kill Trudeau, kill Rayon, kill Grey. Don't let them live." He had done that. He had killed all of them, except Grey's daughter. He would be back for her after the next 4 years. Yes, he would not let her live. They do not deserve to live. They had destroyed his life. He would destroy theirs. He would not let them be happy when his own happiness had been snatched away from him. Never. He looked back at the town. It was twilight yet again. The town looked peaceful, but he could hear faint sounds of crying. Let them cry. They will have to cry again after 4 years. He turned and walked away from the town as darkness fell and made the town silent.